This was a debate that we had, I think, 3 years back, from the Ministry of Housing, and I think it drew a lot of the, should I say, protest and resistance from many Kenyans and employers as well. Why has the president?
Even Sosion.
Even Sosion himself.
Yeah, I remember the teachers.
The teachers, yeah.
I actually.
So that the Sosion is on the other side of the tracks as he changed tone.
I was with the teachers. I was with the teachers.
Yes.
You know, first, Debal, we must always connect with the people that we lead. That's very, very important. When you run this race, run it with the people. Already, we are overtaxing Kenyans. You have just forced down the throat another taxation from NSSF. I'm reading in the newspapers today, the county government of Nairobi wants to increase the motor vehicle daily charges from 250 to 650 shillings. Now you want to tell the ECD teacher.
That's 650, is it hourly? No.
Per day.
Per day.
650 per day. You are telling the Mwananchi down there, the ECD teacher, we debated the income of the ECD teacher here, earning 12,000 shillings, okay? And you're telling that ECD teacher, you know, a very clear disconnect that I'm going to again tax you another 3,000 shillings from your salary to build. These people have no food on the table, Diba. You're actually taking away food. I was with some parents yesterday, and they were telling me they have now changed the schedule. Food is eaten twice. You delay breakfast at home, you tell kids end up in make the compound, go to the shamba, then you serve them breakfast at 10. Then you deliberately delay lunch. You serve it at 4 because you can only afford 2 meals a day. That is the reality of the kind of difficulties Kenyans are facing. So when you again come up and tell them, you want to again tax them. You remember teachers who earn very well. Sosion will tell you. Katesio, my good friend, Secretary General Sosion, my good friend, opposed this. I was with OU. I don't know if the OU is now the Secretary General. We did a function with him in Erick Okongo. And I'm telling you, teachers rallied behind and said, when you go to the Senate, tell the Jubilee government we don't want to hear this thing about housing fund. They said a capital, no. And Sosion will confirm to you. So you can't just wake up, Dibal, in a country that has a robust constitution like what we have, where you need to involve Kenyans. You need to have public participation before you take away money from Kenyans. And then introduce this thing in a proper way. And it should be voluntary. How can you force me to give you money for a housing fund the way teachers were asking, when they have already built their homes? They say, who has told the government that that is their priority? The other day we had His Excellency the President visiting us in Nyamira. And they came and said he wanted to launch a housing project. Immediately he left, the Nyamira people on us. They're saying you want us to have, who told you we want you to open lodgings for us? What we wanted is an industrial park. We want the president to support the industrial park that was being set up in Nyamira so that our youths can get employment. They said we have our own homes. If the government wants to get support and resonate with the aspirations of the people of Nyamira, they said set up that industrial park. We have already set aside land. Let the government make their contribution. United Nations Industrial Development Bank should support the project. And that's what we want, not this thing of housing. So, I want to appeal to the Uda administration first, not to overtax Kenyans. Number two, if you want to introduce something as radical as this, ensure that there is robust public participation so that there is ownership from Kenyans. Kenyans are not children. You're talking about adults who are earning money. They are hard-earned money. And they know what is their priority. And then finally, this thing cannot be forced down the throat of Kenyans. Let it be voluntary. You cannot force me to buy a house. Maybe I don't want to buy. So anything that is being introduced should be voluntary, Debal.
So we hope that also other stakeholders were enrolled in this. We saw with the NSSF, the Federation of Kenya Employers taking umbrage with that
Let me come in there.
Please.
At some point, I was assistant minister in the Ministry of Housing, Lands and Housing, that time it was called. And these ideas have been there before. The question is how to implement them. Remember, at that time, we were looking at the urban housing crisis. This is basically Nairobi, and Nairobi is very important to Kenya because it generates 60% of the GDP in this country. Now, but leaders from other parts of the country have also been asking, how can you only be investing, those housing units in the towns, Nairobi and the big towns? Why not extend to other parts of the country? So that's why the idea was, opened up to other areas. But initially, the thinking was, we have a problem here in Nairobi. People don't have houses. We need to help people to get houses, and we need to have low-cost housing. How do we need to do it? We need to the statistics were worked out, and these are the kind of units that we should be developing every year so that people can have adequate housing in Nairobi. But then it was then expanded. So as we are talking about how these processes should take place, let us allow for ideas. I think leadership is about giving ideas. The president has put it out there. The benefit is 700,000 units for civil service, people in the civil service that are going to be developed, and the cost is 4,000 to 15,000. That's about 3% of most civil servant salaries. And you are going to pay this for 15 years. At the end of it, you are guaranteed that you have a house. Because one of the problems of the poverty that people have is that you finish, you are retired as a government officer, you can't pay rent, and then you are forced to go back home, and you can't live in that environment because you are not used to living there. Maybe even you have younger children, and there are all these family complications. People even die early. So I think leadership is about ideas. The idea has been put forward there. As to how it's to be implemented, I think we can have a robust debate around that, because from my understanding, for example, taxation is a function of parliament. So the executive will come with proposals, then it's parliament to approve or disapprove them. But the ideas are there. So if the president says, I want to tax 20% so that everyone can save, can have money for education and so on, those are good ideas. Let them be processed through parliament, because parliament is the place where these ideas of taxation and whatever are going to be discussed. So if they approve it, fine. But for me, it is an idea. And that idea needs robust debate.
Have we interrogated why in the first place it was shut down when it was proposed from the Ministry of Housing by P.S. Singa?
At that time, the same thinking was there, that, the opposition thinking, the people opposed to the idea was that we are overtaxed, therefore we shouldn't do this. It's not a priority. And then they had, they brought in political pressure, and the government curved in, on that idea. But it's an idea that needs to be discussed. And that's about leadership. You don't have to agree with me in everything I say in my leadership. Discuss and give me options.
Right.
The problem with this particular issue is that people are not giving options. They are saying it's bad, let's not tax, and then what? So where are we going with this? So I think it's a good idea, but it needs robust discussion. It's on the table. For me, I think the president needs to bring the proposition to the House for debate. There should be public participation before any form of taxation is done. And if it passes the test, then let's implement it.
Right. Let me rope in Sosion, then I come to Sosion. As you've heard, this should be out of my own volition. It should be really crammed down my throat. But the president has been very categorical. Every civil servant has to pay this 3%.
And I think I'm happy you brought up this item for discussion this morning, because there's a lot of information about housing that is not with Kenyans. And while at Kenya National Union of Teachers, I was privileged to engage and negotiate directly with government on this for purposes of having workers to participate. There's an act of 1967, which of course was envisioned right from independence, that housing was going to be a government program so that workers and Kenyans can access housing over time, of which that law is still in place. Workers are supposed to contribute, but it has not been implemented. The problem with how the housing idea was conceived is what is raising a lot of discussions. I remember I stated very clearly that we want to negotiate and agree on the process of rolling out this housing because it's going to benefit the workers, particularly the main beneficiaries. The primary beneficiaries are the middle class, and the middle class are the workers, who are the people working in Nairobi, who are the people working in Mombasa and in the cities, in towns. They are basically workers who are members of the middle class. And you see many of them are living in slums or poor houses, and when they retire or lose jobs, they don't have homes. Those are obvious facts, and we agreed. There is a lot of sense in implementing the housing program in Kenya. But we asked, how is it going to be implemented so that it benefits all Kenyans? That was one. Two, the sudden deductions from the payslips of workers without reviewing salaries. And I was very categorical that any deduction, if you want to deduct 3%, then review the CBS at that rate, revise and review the CBS to compensate for the same. And that is a standpoint I had. But in Kenya Kwanza, Dibal, I want us to understand one thing. Kenya Kwanza campaigned on what you call the plan. And the plan had 5 pillars. One is agriculture, MSME, digital superhighway, housing, and health. And when you come to housing, all these pitfalls have been negotiated in a very detailed manner. Number one, the housing shall have to be implemented in all the counties. Because with devolution, counties are functions of development and units of and that is where people anyway are. And at the end of the day, citizens will revert back to their homes once they retire. So if we have these housing projects implemented in all counties, whether it's Mandera, whether it's Wajir, Turkana, unlike what Jubilee had, it wasn't very clear where they were building these houses. But now with the building of these houses in all counties, then it is possible for Kenyans to access decent houses. That's one. Two, in terms of deduction from workers, and of course, we discussed even matters of CBS, that there will be proper negotiations of collective bargaining agreements, and government will respect this. And of course, you cannot expect government to initiate demand for salary. That is to begin with the unions, and that is a different thing. It's a different agenda altogether. Contributing 3% and matching with 3% from the employers and implementing other counties is clear enough, providing equity to all workers and all citizens. Now, the matter is being implemented as a flagship of the government. This item was discussed and was an item
that I agree, but I don't hear from you if you are actually agreeing with the 3%. You are just putting around the issue.
No, I'm not skirting. I'm not skirting. Let me be specific. The president. No. I've not changed my position. I have seen within this process, we have seen sanitization and improvement of the process. The president had a meeting with Secretary Generals of unions, and that is common knowledge. And one of the items that was discussed was this one. and it's now being implemented. The housing project is ongoing. It was a commitment to Kenyans. And I can tell you, even I visited Bahamas, and in Bahamas, a teacher entering service is given a house, and you pay for your entire life. So you are entitled to a house. And so it's time in Kenya, we treat housing as a priority issue for workers and the rest of the citizens who can afford it. And it is a pillar of Kenya Kwanza. And away from what Jubilee was doing, this is a more orderly arrangement, and it should be implemented. The president has made this pronouncement. It was voted for by Kenyans. And I want to believe election is one of the highest level of public participation. The 5 pillars that the president committed and on which Kenyans voted, one of them is housing. It shall have to implement it. The issue now is how. If there are matters that needs to be discussed through process of public participation, let it be done. And the question of when to do it is not if it is going to be done. And what Mugen is talking about, making it very optional, I don't think in terms of social solidarity, issues of social solidarity, like health insurance, that are often made very compulsory, like housing, if you want to come up with good housing structure and framework as a country, it will not be given as an option. Matters of social solidarity are often made compulsory. So the housing will be compulsory for it to work.
It will be
and
compulsory,
it has to be delivered.
But
through the process of public participation, how? What is the employer going to contribute? What is the worker going to
allow
contribute?
Me just to button. Thank you.
And then
thank you. Let me hear from.
Look at negotiation of CBS. That's a fact. But politicizing it in the manner it's taking is not right.
Let's take, for instance, that we have Honorable Elachi, who now she has a home, and then you're trying to tell her that now I need to contribute 3%.
There is an Elachi of tomorrow will not have a home.
No. She has a home.
There will be a teacher of tomorrow who will enter service without a house.
Okay, let me just
let her. You
defend yourself.
That's a fact.
I mean, so you see, one of the things we appreciate from Kibaki's time is that whenever a government comes in, you must take over and finalize projects that were there. So I appreciate that. But then also, I would wish now that the government will understand that we have come from COVID, that 2 years across global, everything closed. And this is one thing now our government must start appreciating, that it is not the wish of Kenyans to find themselves in the lives they are in. It was because of COVID. And so what is your plan post-COVID? Yes, we have the projects, they must be done, but there must be a way of now giving Kenyans also, again, a plan that we are coming out of COVID, and this is post-COVID. All these challenges we are going through are because of COVID, and we must appreciate that. And so when you come and we continue with the housing, which we have to, then there must be a different way of doing it. Either the way we do it in mortgage, let Kenyans just put them into mortgage then, and say the same way I'll go to Parliament, I'm supposed to have a mortgage which I'm already paying that mortgage for the next 4 years. I must clear my mortgage. You see, you can't put me now into this 3%. And so you must cluster. For those who are unpensionable and whatever, put them onto this program. They will say, those who want to be part of it, and by the way, in the affordable housing that was started, you find that we have Kenyans who, for them, they will buy even 5 or 6 units. Like the first ones that were done in Nairobi, you find other people with 7, 9 units. So we also need to ask ourselves, as we go into this, how have you restructured so that one Kenyan does not walk in Karioko and just buy 10 units, 11 units to sell? Then that is not affordable. Then there is no need of this 3%. So they must restructure the program and put in very clear mechanisms that if we are doing on this, then let Kenyans, all of them, be able. But you see, as the contractor who is constructing these houses also, you cannot try him on this, because you see he's spending money and it's not government money. So there are those who have decided they will go private, just the way we have expressway. If we have houses like those ones, you have to allow that contractor to sell his houses based on the need. If someone comes and buys 10, fine. But the ones that are strictly for government, that you want to say now each county has, these are government units, then those are the ones you take through this process. So in Nairobi, I will tell you for free, we have very many people, they'll just buy. Like we buy off-plan. I mean, people start buying off-plan depending on the area. So there are areas that are very, very high-end that will go very fast. So if you are starting a program of affordable housing, for example, in Woodley, trust me, they will not. They will go on off-plan. The same way in Karioko right now, they will go on off-plan.
You still not told me if you have the house, will you really go for this option? And if it's being
well, my children will go because maybe they are already, some of them working, so they'll have to go. But I've just said, let the government look at it from a post-COVID policy where you caution, because Kenyans are struggling.
Thank you.
Even in that 3%, they don't have. If you tell them what is the priority, most